Hi, and welcome to this free video tutorial series from Pro Tools Expert, looking at the Dolby Atmos home entertainment workflow. In episodes 1 to 4 so far, we have covered the initial technical setup of Pro Tools and the Dolby Atmos production suite to avoid mixing yourself into a corner, Avid and Dolby's recommended aggregate device setup, our own exclusively developed alternative workflow, and tips for how to manage loudness in your Atmos mixes. In this 5th episode of the series, we'll be taking a look at using immersive upmixers and reverbs, and why it's best to use at least 7.1.4 instances of these plugins. We'll be looking at 4 popular immersive plugins: iZotope's Stratus 3D, Liquisonic's brand new Cinematic Rooms Pro, Nugent Audio's Halo Upmix 3D, and Perfect Surround's Pentio 16 Pro. Before we get into details with these plugins, we need to take a look at some basic rules of surround mixing. Here are 2 upmixes of the same track, one in 7.1.2 at the top, and the other in 7.1.4 at the bottom. Let's take a closer look at the height channels on the right of the meters: LTF, LTR, RTF, and RTR. These stand for left top front, left top rear, right top front, and right top rear. Looking at the 7.1.2 upmix, you can see that the height channels, the 0.2, are being fed equally to the front and rear height channels. If we now look at the 7.1.4 upmix, you can see that the front-rear relationship of the height channels more resembles the front-rear relationship of the flat channels, the 7.0. But why is this important? Firstly, when mixing in conventional surround, the first golden rule is never send the same signal to the front and the rear. This can cause what I call the pressure cooker effect. If we look at analysis of a 5.1 mix, with the same signal coming out of all speakers, you can see that the focus of that signal is dead center of the room. The listener has audio coming at them from all directions, which bears no resemblance to any real-life situation, and what's worse, can subject the listener to fatigue and cause legibility issues when balanced against dialogue. If we compare this to an upmix of the same source, you can see that the focus of that sound is moving around in a far more natural manner. When working with the Dolby Atmos production suite and its automatic re-renders, there's another important issue. On the 7.1.4 upmix, if we solo the height channel outputs of the upmixer, we can see that in the resulting re-render fold down, the front-rear relationship is closer to that of the flat 5.0. However, if we switch to the 7.1.2 upmixer with the height output soloed, when set to default settings, the Dolby Atmos renderer sends the height channels exclusively to the rear, giving a 5.1 result that doesn't really resemble the 7.1.4 master. For all these reasons, I would highly recommend using upmixers and reverbs with at least a quad height channel output. That way your fold-down deliverables are far more likely to properly resemble your master mix. Having explored the reasons for working this way, let's take a look at how we implement this on our 4 plugins. We'll start with the reverb plugins, iZotope's Stratus 3D and Liquisonic's Cinematic Rooms, as they both work in a similar fashion. First, set up a 7.1 aux input for your reverb plugin. This is so that when you route an aux send to the plugin, the pan position of the source signal will follow the position in your main panner. That's when the aux send is set to pan follows main mode. On Stratus 3D, you need to tell the plugin that it is in 7.1.4 mode, and then the height channels will become available on extra outputs. This step isn't necessary with Cinematic Rooms. Create 2 stereo aux inputs, and set their inputs to the front and rear plugin outputs of the respective plugins. Then route these 2 aux inputs to 2 stereo objects and pan them according to your tastes. I prefer to pan these objects to match the relative locations of my speakers, as per the diagram shown in the Dolby renderer. When it comes to the upmixers though, they work in a different way. For both, set up an aux input that reflects the configuration of your source signal. In this example, I'm using stereo, but it is possible to upmix from stereo, quad, 5.0, 5.1, 7.0, and 7.1, among others. With Nugent Audio's Halo 3D upmixer, first route its 7.1 output to the 7.1 subpath of your 7.1.2 bed. In order to get the height channels out of the plugin, and to enable the quad height upmix mode, you have to set up a separate Nugent Audio Receive plugin. Create a quad aux input and insert the Nugent Audio Receive plugin on it. Then go to the I/O setup and create a quad bus. Remove the automatic mono subpaths and replace them with 2 stereo subpaths. Going back to the Receive aux input, route this to your newly created quad bus. Then create 2 stereo aux inputs and source their inputs from the 2 stereo subpaths of the quad bus that the Receive plugin is routed to. Next, route these 2 stereo inputs to stereo objects and pan them as per the Reverbs. The final step is to go to the Halo 3D plugin, click on the Settings wheel, and select the appropriate Nugent Audio Receive plugin for the Upmixer to route its quad height channels to. Once selected, the output metering configuration will update and the 3D presets will become available in the main plugin. Pentio 16 Pro uses a different method. When selecting which configuration of Pentio you require, select the stereo, in this case, to third order ambisonics variant. Then go to I/O setup and create a new third order ambisonics bus. Again, delete the automatically created mono subbuses and create 1 7.1 subbus and 2 stereo subbuses. Place the 7.1 subbus on the first 8 paths, then if you're working in 7.1.4, place the 2 stereo subbuses on paths 10 and 11 and 14 and 15 respectively, bearing in mind that in third order ambisonics, the first subpath is called 0. Once you've set this up, go back to your session and route the output of Pentio 16 Pro to this new third order ambisonics bus. Next, create 1 7.1 aux input and 2 stereo aux inputs. Route the input of the 7.1 aux input from the 7.1 subbus on the third order ambisonics bus that you just created, then route its output to the 7.1 subpath of your 7.1.2 bed. On the stereo aux inputs, route their inputs from the 2 stereo subpaths and route their outputs to stereo objects and pan as per the other plugins. The final step is to go to Pentio and set it to 7.1.4 mode. With all these plugins, except for Pentio, it's worth setting up mix groups and solo safe for the outputs to ensure consistency when controlling output levels. With Pentio, this isn't necessary, as you can just control its main output and keep the 7.1 and height returns at unity. So that's how I'd recommend working with 7.1.4 Upmixers and Reverbs. Come back next time, where we'll be looking at the end game, mastering. See you soon.